Yes, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Jack Barber. I'm joined by Andy Rossi, and this is the Evolution of Movies show. And Andy, we've got a guest that I am very excited to have on. He's someone who is he's a host of many shows. He's a caster for Rocket League and other esports, but he also likes to review shows and wrestling and all sorts of things. He does everything. He'll be able to explain it so much better than I can. Let's just bring the fella on. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Flobo Boyce. Flobo, how are you?
I have my own applause sign. This is great.
You like that?
Yeah, so
thanks for having me on. I appreciate you, man.
Yeah, everyone on the for everyone on the audio version only, Andy is wearing one of Flobo's shirts, #1 contender Flobito, one of my favorite shirts, which you can get at flobito.threadless.com. But yeah. Flobo, you do so much. It's so hard to introduce you because I don't know even where to start. But you are an esports caster.
Yeah, I get to give the hype to video games. Like these esports have blown up. You guys remember when we used to play video games for 30 minutes if our homework was done and we were good kids, but now kids drop out of high school and college to do these games, and they're superstars and celebrities. In fact, about a month from now at YouTube Theater, which is the theater next to SoFi Stadium, they're having a Rocket League championship, which I'm going to go to. It's just so crazy to be part of that. I'm not casting that one, but typically I do cast Rocket League. It's a game I love so much, and to be able to give that voice to it, it's amazing.
Well, and another reason I want to have you on is similar to Andy Rossi, who is a writer, producer, director, actor. You're also a writer. You've written a ton of books, and I think that's why you're going to be very valuable on this episode of Evolution of Movies, because I want to get into the nitty-gritty of storytelling with this movie.
I love it. Why not? And I actually escaped film school. So. Yeah. Hey, yeah. I see Dead Body. Andy Ross is a good storyteller too. I was on the edge of my seat from top to bottom.
Thank you.
So, how are you doing, Andy? I didn't actually ask you.
I'm doing great. You know, Flobo makes me happy, so I'm excited for today.
Andy Rossi, again, for our audio listeners, you're missing out. A clean-shaven Andy Rossi, just looking like a baby's bottom here.
Cleaning up for Flobo.
Yeah. Well, you're taken.
Well, this is the Evolution of Movies show. If you're new to the show, what it is basically we watch a movie and then we chat about it book club style, but we call it the Evolution of Movies because we always watch a movie that came out 1 year after the last movie we watched. So we start in 1980, go to 1981, 1982. Now we're all the way up to 1989, a time when movie theaters were filled with classics like Field of Dreams, Dead Poets Society, and of course, Police Academy 6. We are talking about any of those. We're talking about Roadhouse, a movie IMDb describes as a tough bouncer's hired to tame a dirty bar. I don't know if you can. That's basically the show. I feel like they summed it all up, but yeah. I love this movie. It's just classic action. I can't say the name of it without hearing Peter Griffin's voice in my head saying Roadhouse, but we have a fun little bit here. Andy, before we get Flobo's take, can you guess the Rotten Tomatoes score?
Okay. If it was me when I first watched this, it was probably like 10 years old, I would have gave it like a 99. But
wow.
But looking back, the 80s are so hard. I would go
to kind of quantify it. We had Raiders of the Lost Ark and Ghostbusters. Yeah. They were in the 90s. We did Goonies, which, if I remember right, was in the 50s or 60s.
Yeah, something like that, or like 70s? Low 70s.
Yeah.
But we had the one that throws me off every time is Flash Gordon was like a 60 something, and yeah. So, man, I don't know, Jack. I think I'm gonna go maybe 59.
59.
Final answer.
Flobo, what's the over under on that? 59. You think it's higher or lower?
I unfortunately can answer that because I looked it up before I did this show.
Okay.
so I can't do it.
Based on his reaction, though, I think it's lower.
I can't do it. No. I'm looking up. Yeah. Okay.
So Rotten Tomatoes. By the way, thanks for being prepared, Flobo. This is so weird. It's so interesting to have a show. Rotten Tomatoes has it sitting at a 37%, making it the
on.
lowest ranked movie we've ever done, I believe. And I'm flabbergasted by that ranking.
37.
I mean, with that description, I can't see why. It's just like the end.
Yeah, a bouncer. He beats people up. But Flobo, had you seen Roadhouse before this, and what were your thoughts going into it this time around?
So I'm so glad you asked this question because the answer is yes and no. Because when I was a kid, there still exists WPIX Channel 11, New York's movie station, basically New York Superstation. There's superstations, meaning anywhere in the planet, there's certain stations you can watch. Like if you're from Chicago, there's like WGN, there's WPIX. So New York's movie station will always do like these movies in the afternoon. Usually it's like a sign to go do your homework at schools tomorrow. So I've seen the first 20 minutes of Roadhouse like 1,000 times, but I've never finished it. I get to the first commercial break. I go, this guy's too manly, and I move on to something else.
Right. He is very manly. The hair alone, I think, puts him in possibly top 10 men of all time status. But it's funny you say that because there are so many movies, as I've done in this show, that it's the same way where I'm like, oh, yeah, I've seen this a million times. Like, we recently watched the Goonies, and I was thinking, I've seen the Goonies a million times, and I start the movie, and I was thinking, I don't remember this at all. And it's because I've never started the movie. I've always caught it halfway through the movie.
Oh, absolutely. Especially with the Goonies, as someone that grew up in that time after the original and before the updated electric company, I never got that reference until I was an adult. The Hey You Guys. Oh, wait. It's from PBS. How about that?
Well, let's get into this movie. But before we do, as always, I like to thank everyone who is watching, listening. Make sure to hit the like, comment, share, subscribe, 5-star review button. If you listen on Spotify, you can now leave a 5-star ranking on Spotify. So make sure to go in there and give us a 5-star review. Also, leave a comment somewhere, and I may read your comments on the air. Probably not, though, because I always forget to look it up. But you never know. This could be the time I do it.
Honesty.
So let's get into this movie. It starts outside of a happening joint, and a guy who used the airport limo service arrives and walks in. The band is playing, the people are dancing, and Dalton is on patrol. When things get a little out of hand, they take things outside, and Dalton just leaves them there. He stitches up his cut, and Mr. Airport Limo says he wants Dalton to help him clean up his bar. And even though he isn't Wade Garrett, he's going to do it. Flobo, I always like to start off with the guest. This is the start of the movie. Tell us about the world that we live in and the characters that inhabit it.
Oh, absolutely. Well, one, you could tell that Patrick Swayze is a star because he's like, I'm Joel Dalton. I'm like, no, you're not. You're Patrick Swayze. Let's cut the crap. Which is really cool because in film school, they talk about mise en scene, right? Like the aesthetic, the look, the feel, characterization, understanding the stakes. And I think to its credit, in the first 10 minutes, you really get to understand that this is a city bar. There's probably peanut shells and sawdust on the floor. This is a different time where you can tell who is tough, who's overly tough, who's the guy who tries to be tough. I think it's really cool. It's a very skillful art that's overlooked to be able to give you all that information up front without trying to be a whole big tease with it. So yeah, I was on board. That's actually maybe because the nostalgia kicked in, like, oh yeah, but I was definitely on board.
This guy, I want to talk about the guy who causes problems in this first bar, Andy. And I know it's messed up. I know it's wrong, but the way he kicked the chair out from under the girl kind of made me laugh a little bit. This guy, just a classic jerk who gets taken out here. And not only do we see how tough Dalton is, but we also see that he's a thinking man with how he deals with this.
This is getting so great. All right. I wrote this down at 4 minutes, 18 seconds. Swayze already has his shirt off. The credits aren't even over yet. They haven't even said who's directed this movie yet. And he's already got his shirt off and he's stitching himself. So I just thought that was funny because this is what you're getting right here. You're going to get shirtless Swayze a lot. He's going to be fixing himself up. So I think you really get who Dalton is very early on. And the guy you were talking about with the airport limousine, is that what you said?
Yeah.
I kept waiting.
He got out of the limo and it says airport limo service on the side of the limo, which I don't was he supposed to look rich or was he supposed to look like he just got the airport? You know what I mean? It didn't look as baller as I think it was supposed to look.
Try for both, got neither.
And he just looks, he looks like like he's gonna do something bad or something. He has a very villainous
Yes.
look. So the whole time I kept going, he's trying to screw Swayze over. He's gonna do something.
Yes, I thought the same thing. He looks like an 80s villain. Like he's
Yeah.
the one that would be the whole time, and not to jump ahead, but that the whole time you're expecting at some point he's going to go, actually, Dalton, my real plan was.
Yeah. I felt like an
It's to
Indiana
sleep
Jones
with
adventure.
Yeah.
But,
And
Wait,
I was
go
just
ahead.
going to say one more thing I do need to mention because we're going to talk about this movie later this season is the band in the first bar is actually the same band in From Dusk Till Dawn.
Oh, is it really? I
Wow.
didn't know.
The guy that's singing in the beginning. I'm like, wait a minute. I think he's in Desperado as well. So we'll see him again.
Wow.
That's how central casting bands. Hey, can you book me for this one?
I did want to ask, and Flobo, we'll go to you for this, is he had a little line here that was definitely a character development thing where as he's stitching up his arm, he says, I don't fly. It's too dangerous.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I thought it was such a interesting, clearly he doesn't find fighting dangerous.
This is the peak golden age for quips. If you are Jones or even James Bond at the time, but I don't know. I thought that was kind of cool. He already proved himself because if I had to get something stitched, I will make that a big deal for a long time. But if you've flown the past 5 years, it's pretty as dangerous. So I can imagine how it was back then when there was no security. So.
To your point, people will, if they get a shot these days, they'll tell you about it for a week, like, oh, it's still sore.
Yeah.
But back then he's stitching up and already like, oh yeah, this is fine, but flying.
I wish there was a camera in my house when I'm trying to put alcohol in the paper cut. He's like, yeah, whatever. Flying sucks. Whatever.
Well, Dalton loads up the tape deck of his Mercedes and starts driving to Kansas and to the Double Deuce. The band plays behind a fence, fights are breaking out everywhere, and drug deals are going down. Everyone already knows who Dalton is and his legend is, and it's put to the test when a massive fight breaks out over $20 and a kiss. Dalton simply observes, and they eventually clean up the mess, but Terry Funk isn't a fan yet. At the company meeting, the boss says Dalton is in charge, and the first thing he does is fire Terry Funk. Also, he fires a drug dealer. He then gives his 3 rules: expect the unexpected, take it outside, and be nice. Night 2 starts, and it's a lot of craziness, but whose house? Dalton's house. He slams a guy's face onto the table, and now his nice advice starts to work. After the night is over, Dalton also fires the bartender for skimming, and one of the bouncers he finds with a woman in the closet. Flobo, walk us through that sex scene.
I was taking notes. You know what? It was interesting because I thought that knowing how edgy Dalton was, you probably like, take it outside. But he was kind of like, you're done. And I was like, wait, what kind of HR-ish is this guy on? You know what I mean? He's way too clean. But you know what? If someone as a boss is going to get in a plane and fly across country to get a bouncer, Miles will be the best bouncer in town, right? As far as sex scene, it was pretty quick. I don't know.
Yeah. I appreciate you actually mentioned. Most people duck the question, but
even after he got fired, he stopped.
Yeah. If you're fired, you'd be like, okay, well then I'm gonna finish.
Maybe he's the most manly of them all.
Yeah, he only liked doing it because he was on the clock.
It was but Andy, I thought what this really showed and this scene to me was just how cool Dalton is. That first night, obviously things are happening. He's like, no, I'm just going to look and I'm going to watch and I'm going to see what's going on. But then also as the other fights were happening, he to his advice, he never gets out of hand. He never goes crazy. He's always still very cool.
Yeah. I love all the stuff about him too. All the stuff. Oh, that's Dalton. I love how they know who Dalton is. He's a bouncer and he's just like known all over this bar, and the things they say about him. One guy says, I heard he ripped some guy's throat out. And you go, oh my God, that sounds like something that I'll probably never see. And then, I was going to say, you'll
never see it.
And I was going to say, the weird thing, I wrote this down. The guy says something about getting nipple to nipple with a girl, and then like another guy is gonna give another guy $20 to fondle his girlfriend. I don't know. And then he's letting his buddy fondle his girlfriend, and then when he finds out the guy doesn't have $20, then shit hits the fan. But I'm like, probably shouldn't have even let that. You really need $20 that bad?
I think it was just they were simulating what like prostitution is happening there, I think is the story. But
I thought it was his girlfriend. I'm like, dude. But I'm so glad you mentioned Terry Funk.
I wish you could see this in the other version, how many pearls Andy's clutched. Oh my goodness me. Prostitution. That's
prostitution in the double deuce?
Right. But Flobo, I know this is one of those movies where you don't ask these kind of questions, but like why would you go to this bar? Why would anyone go to this bar? Like, how is this bar in a town with this kind of clientele that comes out like this worth enough money to be worth flying to New York and getting the best bouncer in the world that has a legendary reputation to come in? Like, what's the upside of this place?
I don't know. I figured that would have been an easy closure. I was looking for, and it's kind of sound weird, but almost like Ghostbusters. I was looking for the government agency saying you can't do this to put a little pressure on them. But you're right. If this happens to happen in this one place where it's just totally like everything goes, where purge, crime is legal, just burn it down. Well, I will get to that. Burn it down and move on to something else. I mean, oh my goodness me.
Well, you have the Jeff Healey band.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's the national treasure.
Maybe that's where they went. Well, nothing else to do.
And that's what I'm saying. How much money is that band getting paid to play there? I mean, is there a cover chart? Like, clearly people aren't spending a ton of money at this place. Clearly it's not like a high-end bar. Like, is it worth playing there if you're any good? Like, because I don't know. I know you're not supposed to ask these questions. I'm watching this.
It's kind of a side gig place. You go there, play, and then get all the drugs and prostitution and get that second income and then leave.
That's what I was thinking. I guess maybe as people who have worked in the gig economy, I was like, I wouldn't take a gig there. I just like, no, I'm not going to work there.
And why did he fire Terry Funk? Terry Funk was literally like
he wasn't there.
Power slamming people. I'm like, you need that guy. Terry, power slam this guy. Pile drive this guy into a table. Like, you need that guy. And they got rid of him. I just thought that was a bad move, Swayze.
And well, because he's not nice. That's the problem. You got to be nice, Andy. This was also there's two things here, but we did see that the style works here. The Dalton effect works, that in a tough place, you could already see him cleaning things out from the inside, the people working there, the getting rid of the clientele that wasn't good. But I did want to bring this up, and we'll go to you for this one, Flobo. Again, I'm not supposed to ask these kind of questions, but that place he lived in, if it was in LA, would be wildly expensive. You've got this giant loft overlooking a pond or a lake with a beautiful home across the way, and they charge him $100 a month.
And he was fighting it too, like, I got to charge you something. I'm like, I was on a movie.
Again, I'm thinking like, why is a bar where people can barely rent a beautiful place like that to people to live in town worth this kind of money? It didn't make any sense the whole time. Like, this financially, none of this makes sense to me.
You know what? I live in a glorious shoebox with a view of my next door neighbor's bedroom, and I pay upwards of $1,500. And people tell me it's a good deal here in West LA. So I don't want to hear $100 a month, Swayze.
Yeah, $100 a month. I was thinking, I'll take that right now. And the guy's like, yeah, I can't get anyone to take it. Okay. So Dalton heads to the auto parts store and makes friends with the owner. And the bad guy, Wesley, shows up before Dalton takes off to do his Tai Chi exercises.
Oh, my gosh.
Dalton heads to work, and the former bartender says he works for Wesley, who is the alcohol supplier in town, and that means he's not leaving. So Dalton beats him all up very nicely, of course. At the hospital, Dalton is spilling blood and spitting game and woos the doctor Elizabeth. Meanwhile, Wesley gets his cronies together, including the famous Bigfoot monster truck, and he's not happy about how things are going down with the new sheriff in town. So they rob the auto parts store, and Dalton calls his friend Wade Garrett. But at the Double Deuce, it already seems like things are changing. The fence between the band and the people has come down. People are dancing, and girls are coming on to Dalton. That is until the bad guys show up. One of them kicks straight up, and Dalton breaks his leg like a pencil before nicely dragging him outside and beating the crap out of him in front of the doctor. On their date, he rationalizes that people who look for trouble aren't a problem for people who are ready. So we're sort of seeing through this part more getting ingrained into the town here. Andy, I want you to talk about the scene where we see Dalton's butt.
Yeah, that's at 31 minutes in.
Yes. What? What show am I on, guys? You guys clue me in.
This is a very serious review.
It is funny though how they that Tai Chi part just takes so long, and the Emmett the farmer is like in awe of just watching this and very confused about. I think it's, what does he have, a Mercedes right underneath the hood? But I don't know which he's more excited about, is the Tai Chi or
what I'm excited about.
And I got to mention this:
the
when Swayze gets in the fight with the bartender, he pulls a huge knife, like Jesus, and he calls him Chicken Dick. I just thought that was a funny 80s.
I got my notes too. Yeah. Because you don't think about it, you're like, I guess they have to have something, but then it must be tiny.
That's where this movie is the most unrealistic. Is if someone said that to you, you'd have to stop and be like, okay, that's kind of funny.
Yeah, exactly. I still gotta stab you, but it's pretty funny.
It is pretty. It's pretty funny. But Flobo, I want to talk to you. There is some character development here, and it was Wesley. He's driving all over the road. It almost runs Dalton off the road. But really, this is, I think, sort of a quick glimpse into the fact that he doesn't care about anyone else in this town, and if he runs you off the road, that's fine. He's gonna have his fun and be himself.
Well, allow me to put my nerdy glasses on. They're invisible, y'all. What's really
the
cool
audio only version, he actually put glasses.
Yeah, you got to lie to the audio version,
and they're pretty nerdy.
Yeah.
What's cool about movies is that you can actually look through different lenses as the movies progress or after they get released. I know this probably wasn't the intent of the film, but looking back on it now, we have what is considered ideal masculinity in Dalton, right? He works out, he's a nice person, he negotiates both his car and his living quarters. He somehow charmed the doctor while he was getting stitched up, which I've tried once and I failed miserably at. But then you have Wesley, who was kind of like the opposite. Someone that was probably in an environment where they had to rise up and be an alpha in their own location. And not only does he feel threatened by this person in Dalton, the person who's foreign to their land, but is actually someone who's a better person while doing it. So it's almost like threatened with frustration. So a lot of times you don't want to be empathized with Wesley. I wouldn't mention that publicly, but you kind of see where he's coming from, which is pretty cool. A cool dynamic between these two.
Yeah. And another character that we got a quick glimpse of is the legendary, best to ever do the thing, Wade Garrett, Andy. Sam Elliott, by the way, he was playing someone they called an old guy back in 1989. Little did he know, 30 years later, he's still going to be playing a BAMF in TV shows. He was actually 45 here, which just speaking of clutch and pearls, I was like, that is not that old.
different time.
But his glorious hair. Tell us a bit about Wade Garrett, Andy.
Yeah, he's great. He calls Dalton Miho. I just thought that was a nice little thing. And he's hanging out in a strip bar or something. Yeah. And I think the main thing that I love about him is, like you said, that hair. He's just got great hair. And just to see, I mean, I guess he was older, but to see a younger Sam Elliott,
Airful.
Just
Sam Rockwell, what?
Both good Sams. Sam Malone.
All Sam's the same.
But I did want to talk about one thing that I didn't remember when I saw this before. When he meets the doctor, we're going back to Dalton. He has a degree in philosophy at NYU. Is that what we find out? That's all I wanted to say.
No, that actually leads me to my very next thing.
I don't remember that.
That leads me to my next thing, and I want to, Flobo, kind of go to you. Is I was watching this, and it's interesting how over the past couple 20 years maybe, we as viewing audiences have grown to love the flawed character, grown to love the person that's not perfect. But I'm wondering, back in the 80s, do you think they needed to add this philosophy side of him, this educated side of him, to soften up a hard character? Because back then, I think maybe a guy who literally is just, I'm a bouncer who likes to beat people up, may not have been likable enough.
Right. What's interesting, because a lot of times the film school text will point to Die Hard as being the first movie where we saw the classic flawed character in John McClane, but you could definitely see the potential of that there. I think it's more played for laughs. I don't really think, I mean, that laughs like a joke, but definitely like oh, by the way, I do this, and you know what I mean? But I really think like the elements are there to see that, okay, we are tired of the Commando era, unlimited machine gun. Let's give me someone who's a bit more interpersonal, someone who's not totally a robot. And that's even our villains too.
Yeah. Well, because it also plays out as he's talking to the doctor on their date, where she says, someone's got to do it. And he says, someone has to pay someone to do it. And he almost saying he doesn't like to fight. He does it for the money, or because he has to, or it kind of a weird logic here. But I think they're trying to, again, make us as viewers not think he's a bad guy. He's almost like he has, like a reluctant hero.
Right.
Yeah. And my question is, Jack, who has better hair? Him or the doctor?
Don't make me do this. Oh, him. He has better hair than the doctor. I thought you were going to make me choose between Sam Elliott and Patrick Swayze. That is something I could not do.
I would never ask you that. That's just, we'd be here for hours.
Right. That's a whole series of its own, is breaking down the dynamics.
Right. Volume versus nutrition. I mean,
but a lot of hairspray between Dalton and the doctor. Just
sometimes.
Here's the
classic
thing,
80s hairspray.
I want to say that Patrick Swayze has the better hair because it hasn't gone gray yet. But then I just think of that one moment where Sam Elliott just pulls out the rubber band and pulls back the ponytail. It's like, oh man, this guy's got hair. This guy's got hair for days.
Yeah.
Flobo's regretting this.
Yeah, I know I'm not wanted, guys. Thanks so much.
Wade should have his own. What's it called? He should have his own movie. What do you call it when it's like when you get your own
a prequel
spinoff?
Yeah, he should have got his own spinoff. Yeah. It would have been earlier days, of course. We'll get to that.
Yeah, you could actually get a probably I could see them doing like a Netflix series of like their lives before this and them going town to town and beating people up. I don't know.
Here's the question: if they do a spinoff, does it acknowledge Roadhouse 2, or does it becomes non-canon?
No one acknowledges Roadhouse 2.
I withdraw my question. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. Let's get this back on track and talk about their hair again. We have so the bad guys finally come to Dalton to have a chat, and at Wesley's house, he says he knows Dalton likes to beat people up and that he killed a guy once. He offers to buy Dalton, but Dalton says no. The bar is packed, but now they're out of booze because Wesley is cutting them off. Elizabeth swings by, and the bad guys notice that she swung by. So Dalton and the doctor go back to his place. They do a little dirty dancing. Anyways, Flobo, walk us through this sex scene.
Okay, well, you know what? I got to give credit because the first song definitely was a mood killer, and you got a second chance. And so a lot better than the one we saw at the bar. Am I right? So good to know if you want to have sex with someone, the bar, the first place you want to go. You want to go to a cabin where there's a bunch of hay. I enjoyed this one a lot. I'm not sure how many cheeks we've seen. Andy, do you have that written down in your notes? But definitely top there.
He's got a spreadsheet of
not enough
of cheek ratio.
Cheek body parts. Yeah.
He is sitting naked outside though. After their sex scene, he's like outside, and I'm like, why is he naked outside? And I thought at first he didn't have a blanket either, but he did.
Which is such a power move, by the way, because I know he knows that Wesley's across the pond looking on. And looking like a creepy old pervert watching them. And he's just like, look, you want to watch? I'm just going to come sit down my bare butt on this barn. And
the long, hard couple minutes of, gotcha.
But they do something here. They show the girl from the bar all beat up, which I think is always a great way to make a villain just completely unredeemable, Andy.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where we get that moment of, it's like the parlay. Wesley's trying to say, look, can we work together? And we're seeing just how ethical Dalton is.
He is a guy that's not going to be bought by anyone because he's Dalton, and he's
except for the first except for the first bar.
Unless it's a lot of money, and then he'll do it.
He totally quit during his shift. It's kind of unprofessional.
And I'm still wondering.
He did, didn't he? I'm not for sale. You literally quit mid-shift last time. Because someone offered you more money. There wasn't a whole lot to break down in this part. I just wanted to do the walk us through the sexting bit.
It is interesting how they put Wesley right across the pond from him, though. This is such a silly thing to do.
And I like how it's this beautiful pond. And on one side, it's like a beautiful mansion, and on the other side, it's just this rundown farm. like what? That doesn't exist. Come on, like there's no places where you've got a beautiful pond and it's like completely different financial situations on both sides.
The rent's great, guys.
Yeah,
it's not a train track. If it's a train track, I'd believe it.
Get it? What was the wife doing? By the way, is that his wife? She's confusing too. The poor women in this movie are not treated very well. And is she doing like aerobics in the house? And is that his girlfriend or is that his wife? I don't know. That whole situation was confusing because later we see her little performance. I don't know.
Yeah, the whole town is Wesley's. He makes so whoever's in there belongs to him. So the bad guys, they decide to go destroy all the booze at the Double Deuce, and things aren't looking good for our hero until Wade Garrett decides to show up, and he goes right after Terry Funk, and he beats them all up. And this scene is really just setting the stage for the fact there's two BAMFs in the town now. Dalton introduces Wade to his girlfriend, and Garrett literally takes his pants off in front of her and then starts dancing with her. Okay, Dalton and Garrett talk about the past, and Garrett says to just move on, but there's no time. The auto parts store is on fire, and the bad guy doesn't seem that bothered, so he sends his girlfriend up to dance for everyone, and Dalton says one of my favorite lines, if you're going to have a pet, keep it on a leash. And that gets the attention of the main henchman, and he grabs a pool cue, and there's a brawl, and the red shirts are getting all beat up. But Dalton and Garrett hold their own, and the bad guys are just a little too much as Kung Fu Cowboy takes down the mighty Wade Garrett, and Dalton steps in before a gun is fired from Wesley, and that stops everything. The people want to help the auto parts guy take on Wesley, but there's a lot of doubt in town. And to highlight this, Wesley takes Bigfoot, the legendary monster truck of the 90s, and goes to the car dealership and then threatens Dalton through Elizabeth. Now, Dr. Elizabeth is telling Dalton to leave town when the house explodes. And Dalton parkours down to the farmer and saves him. And Dalton
saves him quick, too.
Then he sees the main henchman and catches him on foot when the henchman's on a motorcycle. They start doing battle in a manner that is akin to the ancient gladiators of Rome, but instead of a Colosseum, they have a smoky lake beach. Things are looking bad for Dalton until Dalton kicks the henchman right in the testicles, and the henchman pulls out a gun, so Dalton rips out his throat, kicking him into the lake. The doctor's disappointed, but I'm sure a little bit impressed.
Wow.
It is kind of hard to do.
A lot just happened.
So a lot of stuff happened in here. I want to go back to the very beginning of we get Dalton and Garrett together. And we know we built up this story that these are the two best in the business. And you get a little excited knowing that, hey, like maybe they stand a chance against all these guys.
This had such an old school like WWF feel to me. It was like the two tag team. They're together. The Macho Man and Hogan are together. And they just do some battle in I called it a battle royal because you got Terry Funk in there. There's just a whole bunch of people in this bar. And then Jimmy Poolcue, who I thought was like, he's like, isn't he like a Bizarro Dalton? Like, you know, there's like Bizarro Superman. He was like the dark side of Dalton. But dude comes in there and just, I mean, my question though, he's got a pool cue and he's pretty amazing at it. Why doesn't anybody else grab one? Like, it's like, oh man, the guy's got a pool cue. Oh, I'll go after him with my bare hands. Like,
that's my gimmick, brother. I'm known for the pool cue. I'm the pool cue guy.
Right. That's
plenty of other stuff you could have used as a weapon, but
the funny thing is, if he brought his own pool cue, it would have been fine. But they were using the Double Deuces pool cue, and they're like, "Hey, man, that's not allowed." I want to ask you, Flobo. Have you ever introduced a girlfriend to a friend and had that person immediately take their pants off in front of them?
No, man. I feel like I missed out in life. And I had to go look it up because you guys said Terry Funk so many times. I'm like, oh, what's his actual character name?
No idea.
It's Morgan. I had to go look it up. I was like, yeah, Terry Funk was in this.
It's Terry Funk.
Bunkhouse Brawl. Their fighting scenes are ridiculous, man. Absolutely ridiculous. How they start, how they happen, how they end. Just ridiculous top to bottom.
They are, every fight is, you're right, it's hilarious because like when they're punching, it's like the way they're standing is very like, they look like the Notre Dame mascot when they're fighting.
It's like 30 style boxing.
Yes. So this is the time, Andy, where they're just blowing up the town. Wesley's just blowing up the town.
Mm-hmm.
Again, making me wonder. It's so weird how this town is set up because clearly there's like a doctor's office. He's talking about JCPenney. Like it's not completely middle of nowhere. There's actual businesses here, but never once does a police officer show up or like this guy literally runs a monster truck through a car dealership, and everyone's like, "There's nothing we can do about it."
I know. And where does he get all this TNT? He's just got all this dynamite everywhere, just blowing crap up.
80s, man.
It is great. You mentioned we got to break down the ultimate fight scene here. But first of all, Dalton chases Jimmy on a motorbike and catches him and jumps on him, and they just immediately go into the fight. But I just thought that was great how he literally, Dalton is faster than a motorcycle. Just so we know. But that fight scene, that's what I remember the most. So Flobo, you talked about earlier how you'd watch like the beginning 20 minutes or something. I felt like every time I caught it on TV, it was always this fight scene. And I always knew what was coming. And even today, telling somebody like, yeah, oh, have you seen Roadhouse? Yeah, Swayze pulls a guy's throat out in that. It's just it's so crazy timing too. How it was right when the doctor shows up. She's probably going like, I wonder if I should stay with this guy. His throat ripped out.
This guy who literally has a history of killing people and fighting everywhere he goes. But Andy, what was the quote? Your favorite quote of the movie happens here, right?
Are we allowed to say that on this?
Use the most kid-friendly version you can think.
So one of the toughest things you could possibly say in the 80s, apparently, was when Jimmy says, I used to F guys like you in prison.
I'll be honest. If someone says that to me, I'm going to go, I'm done. I'm out. You win.
Yeah. I don't know what you mean, but I don't like it.
Do I want to qualify or do I don't want to qualify?
But also kind of a compliment. Oh, you used to F guys like me?
Yeah.
Oh,
so
I guess
am I your type?
Yeah.
Is
it the hair?
Right. That's what. Yeah. Plot twist. They start dating each other and have a happy life together.
I do want to talk about one more thing because I kind of mentioned it before. But why is Wesley's girlfriend wife? Why is she up there dancing? And you know the leash line is great, but what was the point? Do we know?
I feel like for the audience, I really feel like I was here's the gladiator thing. You have the entertainment things with the trailers, to have this visual image of people going on like it's normal, and then people are fighting around them. But the idea in character, no idea. No idea. Simplify. Not going to.
I think it was a little bit of Wesley trying to say, I care so little about the auto parts store blowing up that I'm still just gonna have a good time. And I'm going to watch this girl dance. In fact, I'm going to have my girl dance in your bar because this is what I want to do. And I think it was sort of him sort of taking up space in town, sort of being like, this is my bar. It's your bar, but it's my bar. And I'm going to do what I want. Is that what I think from a character beat there?
Makes sense.
So we get to the last part here, and it's a good one. So it's just another day at the office as Wesley calls and says Garrett or Elizabeth are going to die, and he's going to make Dalton pick. Dalton doesn't, so he flips a coin. But Garrett comes in, beaten and battered, and Dalton says he's going to grab Elizabeth, and then they're leaving. But she won't go, even though he gets pretty physical with her because he's the hero. So he heads back to get Garrett, but Garrett is stabbed with the results of the coin flip pinned on his stomach. Dalton takes the knife and goes to, I don't know, stab someone with it, I would assume. The Mercedes comes flying at the bad guy's place, and everyone shoots at the Mercedes as it charges at them, jumping into the air and flipping and exploding all on its own. Oh, wait, no, there's a knife. It wasn't used for stabbing. It was used for driving. In the house, the dorkiest looking henchman gets taken down as Dalton fights like Batman with no guns. But he does stab a dude with a different knife before shooting the former bartender because he's like Batman versus Superman Batman, I guess.
Right.
So he does use some. So he drops a polar bear on the fat one, and now it's down to Wesley. And Wesley is very confident about the situation, all things considered. He does get a shot in, but it's not enough to stop Dalton from beating up an old man. He's about to rip the throat out of this guy, but he doesn't, which is probably for the best because it takes 4 shotgun blasts to put this dude down. The town comes together to hide a bloody murder of a successful businessman as Dalton continues to live in a barn, presumably for the rest of his days.
Is he in prison or house arrest? In a barn.
So I want to start, Andy. We'll start with you. The call, the coin flip. You think Garrett's safe, but he's not. Tell us about how Garrett goes out.
Oh man, I just it's such a bummer because Dalton comes back. He sees him laying on the bar, and he's like, "Hey, buddy, ready to live the rest of our lives together and so many new adventures?" And then he pulls him down, and there's a note written. It's such a bummer. I just still makes me very sad.
Flobo, I want you to tell me all about these henchmen and how they're hanging out before the car comes at them, because they're I gotta admit, they're the dorkiest group of henchmen I've ever seen in my life. Like, one of them scratching his back with the gun handle. And they look like a bunch of dorks. Goobers, as they would say in the Goonies.
You said it yourself, man. There's not many career paths in that town, and good health plan, good dental.
Yeah, they never once talk about the school system in this town. By the way.
Oh, there is none.
You're all goobers.
But Andy, tell us this car. I love this scene with the car because it's so 80s.
Yeah.
How no one's driving it, but it goes right at them. It jumps, it spins, it explodes in the air. Just classic 80s action movie.
And just like you talked about, as a viewer, the first time you're watching this, you see him grab the knife out of Wade, and you're like, oh, he's going to do some stabbing. And then no, he uses that philosophy brain, and he's like, I can do other things with this knife. And he puts it on the car, which is very, very clever. I don't know if that would work, but works for me. But later he's throwing knives too, Swayze, Dalton, which, he's just a man of many different uses of knives.
I hate to say it, but a movie that is such a B movie and so quote unquote brainless, everything pays off. You told me Garrett was the second best. They combined, and now you have a new best. The philosophy brain pays off. The Tai Chi scene comes with fluidity and avoiding attacks. It's like, wow, it's actually well written. Dang it.
It does pay off everything. That's one of my biggest things, especially as a movie like this that gets close to the 2-hour mark. I always say, you can't waste my time, but literally everything does pay off to a degree. Like, they do actually give you
a throat rip happens. It gets mentioned and it happens.
In the doctor pays off.
It is great though, like you said, Jack. Like, he's about to do the throat rip, and you're like, "Here we go!" And then, like, yeah, I don't remember so many shotgun blasts. He keeps coming back. Like, one shotgun blast should have put that guy down instead. It's just like he just keeps coming like the T-1000.
He was like Frankenstein. They kept shooting him, and he just kept like coming with his gun out too. Like, not even like, okay, I was shot. He was like, I'm coming for it. Four different people shot him. Like, with a shotgun. Not just like, okay, it wasn't like they just grazed him with a. By the way, I was gonna say, with like a small gun. Even a small gun, if you graze me with a bullet, I'm done for a month. But
well, and it made me wonder too. It's like, why didn't these 4 guys get together earlier and just shoot him? Like they had to wait till Dalton like had to mess him up a little bit. Then they're like, you know what? Let's bring our shotguns. I have a good feeling about today.
I don't know. After seeing him take the 4 blasts, I think maybe they're like, I don't know if we can kill him because I would have thought 1 gun would have been enough. But like, what if he was at full strength? What if Dalton hadn't beaten that dude up first? Maybe he would have survived those 4 blasts. And
that's totally true. Yeah, he wore him down.
It's like when you can't open up the jar and the next person opens it. You're like, I loosened it for you. Don't loosen the Wesley.
It is great though when the cops come in and start talking like what happened. Nobody's seen anything, and then the fat guy says polar bear fell on me, and then everybody laughs, and that was it. like
very Hanna-Barbera.
Yeah. The credits for this being a small town of people we're supposed to like, they sure laugh off brutally murdering someone in the person's living room without much issue.
And that's probably typically where the credits would run, but instead we go to naked swimming in the pond with Swayze and the doctor. I'm wondering, did Swayze write that in there? Hey guys, I know we did the credit roll after the laugh, but maybe a quick little swimming scene.
It was also interesting. And Flobo, wait, you're gonna say something?
I was trying to underscore the fact that he's the number 1 guy now. Like, I'm number 1, queen, king, my kingdom kind of a thing. But you're right. It would have been perfectly fine to end it right there.
I don't like this Dr. Elizabeth. She rubs me the wrong way. She's like, hey, you killed someone. I don't like you. And he's like, okay, well, now I killed a lot of people. And she's like, oh.
Well, now I love you. Will we go
skinny dipping then? Will I live in the barn with you for the rest of my days?
That's called compromised relationships, my friend. We see eye to eye and we worked it out.
I mean, I guess when she's looking around town, it's Swayze or the guy that got stuck under a polar bear.
Yeah, I was wondering that. Is Dalton, are we to assume that he's gonna live his life now in, was it city called Jasper?
Jasper.
Is he going to be in Jasper? I mean, the last thing we see is Cody, the blind musician. He's singing, and Dalton is swimming. So does that mean Dalton's still working at the Double Deuce? Because he was only supposed to work there to clean it up and then leave, right? But are we to believe now he's here for good?
I think so.
I guess so.
He has a life. He has a house. He has a girl. He has a car. I mean, he has a job security. I mean,
yeah. Until another creepy guy comes around with more money.
Right.
And I was waiting, that guy the whole time. I'm like, eventually he's going to turn. But no.
Nope. He actually is just a normal, good, good guy.
Yeah.
So that kind of sums it up. Flobo, I thought, well, I guess I'll just say I thought this was is different watching this time around, being more analytical. I saw it through a different light. Still kind of a fun throwback though, but Flobo, you'll get the last word. But Andy, any final thoughts on the movie?
I mean, it's just fun and ridiculous. And I wonder if you've ever had seen it for the first time, what your thoughts are. Like for me, it was like some nostalgic there. So it was a lot of fun, but I enjoyed it.
So I, much like me growing up, watched it free with commercials because I wasn't going to rent that movie for any kind of charge. But I did feel there was a bit of a soggy middle, but it has a nice tight beginning, and the end just goes into ridiculousness that we kind of love so much. Like you see why it's a cult film, and of course, I will definitely have "Pain Don't Hurt" tattooed to my body. I enjoyed it for sure.
I didn't like that line. Pain don't hurt.
Pain don't hurt.
That's literally all pain does. That's the only thing pain does.
Oh wow! Look at this guy. The glass can't be half full; it's halfway.
I mean, there's philosophy, and then there's just not getting it.
Don't you ever question Dalton's logic?
Yeah, man.
So that does it for the movie. Now, before we go, we do have a segment called the 6 Degrees, a Kevin Bacon segment, where we challenge Andy Rossi to take one of the actors from this movie and tie him to Kevin Bacon within 6 movies. Andy, can you do it this time?
Absolutely. So we have Patrick Swayze, who is in this movie, was in The Outsiders. And in The Outsiders, Tom Cruise was also in The Outsiders. Tom Cruise was in Interview with a Vampire with Brad Pitt. Jack, what movie was Brad Pitt in?
Sleepers with Kevin Bacon.
That is correct.
Flobo, every time It just we do this every time. It always goes to sleepers. It's never another movie. Like, you would think that Kevin Bacon was in one movie because that's the only movie. It's the only movie it ever gets to. But
are we coming up with the sleepers rule? Are we saying no more sleepers from now on? Is this the challenge?
No.
Okay. No. Then we're screwed every time, Jack. Sorry.
I'm pretty sure Andy starts with sleepers and works his way to the movie. I don't think he actually...
Might be true.
Well, that does it for us this week, or this year, I should say. We're moving on to 1990 next, where we're going to review Pretty Woman with Natalie Canizares. And at 1991, we're going to be watching Terminator 2 with Evan Mack. And in 1992, we're going to be reviewing Army of Darkness with John Koval. 3 guests I'm excited about, 3 movies I'm excited about. We're going to take Pretty Woman in there and not be as masculine for like a decade of movies, because we're going Bloodsport, Roadhouse, Pretty Woman, Terminator 2, Army of Darkness.
What a franchise.
So very interesting run there. Thank you everyone for watching, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing. I'm Jack Farmer. You can find me at Real Jack Farmer across all social media. Andy Rossi, where can the world find you?
You can find me at Just Andy Rossi, or my film at Dead Body Movie.
And Flobo Boyce, thanks so much for being on. Thanks for being a part of it. You're working on a million things. Where can the world follow you, like you, share you, comment you, subscribe you, 5-star review?
You can like me whatever you want, baby. You know how it is. Flobito.com, FLOBITO.com. I'm on Twitter. Ask me a question at Flobo Boyce. And, pick up a copy of Graduation Day, my latest book, my memoir, available now at Amazon. It's called Graduation Day, Life Lessons from the Real World with Real in quotation marks, available now.
That is definitely one you got to pick up. Also, check out flobito.threadless.com for some awesome merch. That does it for us. We'll see you guys next year.